What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I am Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you. So one of the big releases we had on our radar for the 24th of April was the new one from Ulcerate. Stare into Death and Be Still. What a fucking name. This came out on Debamir Morty Productions. This is their first release on that label, I believe, too. They were on Relapse for a long period. These guys formed in New Zealand in 2002, and this is their 6th full-length. And these guys have quite possibly one of the most unique sounds in terms of, I guess, death metal. It's kind of black metal, it's kind of post-metal. It's really all over the fucking place. But it is very entrancing.
I would call this album more so all of those genres than I would previous albums.
Yeah.
This one kind of steps out a little bit more.
Right from the start, the Lifeless Advance actually kind of sounds more like what you'd expect from Ulcerate. I would say the riff in it that opens it up instantly reminded me of Death, but kind of Death around, say, individual thought patterns or symbolic, but with that kind of cavernous production you'd associate with Incantation or Disma. It's very cavernous. There's tons of reverb on the vocals, and the vocals are exceptional. The guy's low belting roar is just prominent all over this album.
Massive, although he does switch it up a little bit. There are some more elements vocally than just his normal cavernous delivery.
And we're probably going to go into lengths about the drum work on here. At least I know this guy will.
I love that guy. Jamie St. Murat is a hell of a fucking drummer. There are, in my opinion, very few who can do what he does with the precision that he does it, because this guy's all blast beats, and when it's not blast beats, it's these insane single stroke rolls that I'm not even sure Brondaler can touch. I'm gonna try not to fanboy here. Gotta
That's the luck.
reel it in, gotta disinfect myself.
Speaking of which, don't shoot disinfectant into your body. Holy shit. I'm still processing that. We just heard this news as we were recording this, and we're like, dude, what?
Yeah, we were jamming this album. I clicked over to my phone, because I know all you fuckers are on your phone. Clicked over and saw that our lovely leader had stated to inject yourself with disinfectant to rid yourself of the virus. Don't
do that.
Don't do it.
Don't fucking do that.
Don't do it.
We like you guys.
I'm not going to do
that.
Yep. I like the scent of crisp linen.
But it doesn't taste like it.
It doesn't taste like it, and more notably, don't do it.
I don't want to hear about what your favorite flavor of Lysol is, okay? Just don't do it. Anyway, back to the album. Now, I think the first 2 tracks are pretty much kind of what I expected from Ulcerate in terms of their overall sound. The first tracks are definitely more blast beat driven, I would say, and there's a lot of creative stuff going on in here. I would say, like, this band is kind of like Portal, except more listenable, I would say.
Correct, yeah, not nearly as far off.
Portal is a decidedly challenging listen, and I try to get it home. I've listened to them multiple times, but I still can't quite get there. This is definitely on that same level, very challenging, but challenging in a different sense. Like, this is very built on dissonance and ambience, and it's a very different kind of listen. And you get to that right around the title track. It is very haunting. Like, this is death metal that really doesn't get brutal, I would say. It's more about creating a mood of sorrow and
sullen. Soulless. I mean,
it's dark.
All the S words, except for D, for dark.
Depressive. We'll throw in another D one. But this actually brings in some other elements that I really wasn't expecting, like namely some stuff that sounds very similar to post-hardcore. There's parts in there that reminded me a lot of a band like Cave-In around Antenna or Jupiter. Very ambient strumming and lots of just dissonant melodies that seem as though they wouldn't be tuneful, but they are somehow catchy and infectious, and they layer the songs beautifully. And that's one thing these guys do. The songs are so layered.
I mean, they kind of have to be. They're a 3-piece band, but for a 3-piece band to sound as full as this does, it's a huge sound. And they all do really well to incorporate, I think, each individual instrument to its full extent.
And there are, like, legit hooks on here, too, that this isn't all about ambience and dissonance. It's majority about that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some really catchy hooks on here. Inversion, quite possibly one of my favorite tracks on here, really has an opening that's very reminiscent of like early Mastodon and Gojira.
Mm-hmm.
And this just has a super solid hook to it. And honestly, I just found myself getting kind of lost in this album.
Yes.
Not losing my attention, because I've listened to this 3 times. I really just kept coming back to it. But it's just interesting listening how these songs are structured. Like, the riff structure is 100% their own, it sounds. Like, this is hard to compare to other bands.
It really is. And like you said, too, about getting lost in it, I kind of just zoned out on it, which wasn't a bad thing, but it really creates a feeling. It really creates almost like an alternate space, almost.
If Neurosis was a death metal band, I think would be kind of similar to this. There's other elements in here that I thought were really interesting too. Visceral Ends.
Mm-hmm.
The opening is very clean and kind of blackened, but there's parts in there that remind me of like the darker sections of Pink Floyd. Like, it's softer but epic. And that one actually is a little bit different because it actually gets chuggy. You don't get like big chuggy riffs on this as much. They're really spaced out. But this one actually has a good chuggy riff with a nice solid groove to it, and it can be hard to bang your head to this because Jamie, the drummer, is doing all sorts of crazy shit. Which I have to say, it is a little Phil happy sometimes, but I can't help but be impressed.
But this is one of the things I like about Ulcerate, too. For the first, I'd say, like 2.5, 3 minutes of this song, it's an instrumental.
Yeah.
There was an instrumental on their 2007 release of Fracture and Failure, and the song was called Failure, and it really was like a 2 or 3 minute instrumental, just kind of jam. I think there were a little bit of vocals on the end, but that's something I like about these guys, is because they really can fill up even a sullen space with accents you wouldn't think of, and I really like it.
Yeah. The whole back half of this album is where I really think the musicianship shines a lot. The songs are more dynamic, I think. They actually slowed down a good chunk on this back half.
Yep.
There's a lot more mid-tempo stuff, whereas like a lot of their earlier stuff is just built on a wall of blast beats and dissonance. Granted, those are really cool, and I like those albums. This was a little bit different approach, and I think it made the song stand out more. And I would say Drawn to the Next Void has one of the best closing riffs in the entire album.
Yeah, dude. And it goes forever.
I love it.
What I would say is it reminds me of the last, like, 3-4 minutes of the song Deliverance by Opeth, of the album Deliverance.
God, I love that song.
And while it's not done with the same power and like, veracity of that riff, it creates that mode, it creates that sense, the overall feeling of the last part of that jam where you just keep getting into that riff over and over again. It's the last 3-4 minutes of this track.
The first half of the song was great too, but I mean, honestly, it just gets completely outshined with this last one, and they carry on for such a long time. And that was a cool thing. When you know you have a killer riff, a killer moment, you keep rolling with it and you keep building on it rather than switching it up. They stuck with this and they built all the way to a fucking fade out to the next track. It was fucking awesome.
Speaking of huge melodies, the last song, Dissolved Orders, starts out with this really just kind of ambient intro. It's a really dissonant melody with just almost if drums were liquid. It just had a real, like, liquidous flow to it.
Yeah.
And then it busts in with this gigantic melody. I think this is the most melodic Ulcerate has ever been.
Yes.
In this point. That melody is huge.
Yeah.
It's a giant hook.
Melodies of them are kind of like spotty in terms of that. They generally favor all the dissonance and ambience. So, I don't know. I was just really shocked by this album in terms of all the elements they brought in. Like, this is an album that should fit in with death metal, but it seems like it fits in so many other places too. A really engaging listen, and it's interesting to hear a band that is death metal at its core, but it really never comes across as angry.
Yeah.
Or brutal in a sense. It's more oppressive. I think that is just a really cool feeling about this band. And there aren't any like moments in here I would say are flat out brutal moments. Like, there's a couple of bits that are breakdowns, but not to the level
breakdowns
you'd think. Like,
as far as Ulcerate is concerned, like, breakdowns don't happen. So when the riff changed to where it could be a breakdown, quote unquote, I don't even know if I'd call it a breakdown.
Overall, I'm going to give this 4.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed this. My only knock being that I think the drums can be a little too fill-happy, but I couldn't help but to be thoroughly impressed with the guy's drum work. And again, this is an interesting step in a different direction for these guys. This is still 100% Ulcerate, but this is a far more dynamic Ulcerate.
I think more accessible. I think this is a little bit more accessible in terms for this band.
For this band, that is important
for
to
this
know.
Band. Yes, for this band. Yes. I'm also going to give it 4.5. First of all, I love Ulcerate. I've loved Ulcerate since Ulcerate started. I think the first I ever heard was The Destroyers of All, and I was just immediately blown back by the drum work and by the fact that I love dissonance and all that shit. And I've continued to follow Ulcerate, and to be honest, the last record was This really brings back Ulcerate for me as far as my love of what they had in the past, and I'm really stoked to see them take a new approach to some things and kind of think outside their box, so to speak. Again, it's Ulcerate. I don't know a whole lot to compare it to. But yeah, I really like this album, especially the back half of it.
Yes.
And, you know, much like this guy, I've jammed this record quite a bit. It's a good listen.
Hooray for early streams.
Yep, I would go so far as to state that this is a more accessible record for them, and I'm probably going to show this to a couple people I wouldn't normally show it to either.
So, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do shit like this all the time. And we're on Instagram!
Yeah, we're gonna make this a habit. Yeah, we're on Instagram. Started a couple weeks ago. You know, we are finding new content to post too. I think we're gonna start posting some entertaining shit in there. So anyway, generally I try to do unsigned bands when I do the reviews and stuff, especially for my What's John Jamming segment. However, again, music is such a vast world. If you have a band and you haven't heard of us, we definitely haven't heard of you, maybe. So hit us up, and I'll throw it into What's John Jammin', and we'll get you guys out there and moving. We want everybody to have fun. And once again, please don't inject disinfectant.
Don't
Just
do it. Don't.
I can't believe that's a thing,
Ugh.
and that I have to tell you that, but don't inject. Fucking.
This is where John goes bye-bye.
Don't do it.
All right, you guys take care.
Later.